Hi there, this video of a series is going to have a look at some natural and man-made materials and how to render them or present them. So I've kind of printed out some reference images to kind of look at, and we're going to go over wood, concrete, pebbles and rocks, and fabric. Okay, so here are my different shapes. And I'm going to show you pencil, coloured pencil and marker really quickly for each of them. But I'm going to start off with wood here. I've got some different forms here which I'm going to look at. But firstly, really quickly, have a think about a tree trunk, and it grows and it has rings on it, so it's got texture. So we have to make sure that we have that within our forms. So I'm going to do this guy and this one just with some lines around it. I'm going to start getting some rings in here. They're not perfectly and circular, and they vary in being parallel with one another. So they generally will be parallel but not exactly. So the depth or the distance between them will change around. So you can really quickly kind of show the wooden elements or texture to a form through that, and you can also vary the line weight and add in a couple of little extra lines, and you want your texture to be darker on one side. So you can achieve this just with pencil, and it's nice if that texture fades out a little bit. You can kind of see, I know this is written on and it's got paint, but it fades out. It's not actually just a line necessarily, it's like a whole tone, and it's quite wide. So I want it to be a bit lighter on here, but darker on this side, thinking that my light's coming from that direction there. So these lines are quite natural. When I'm drawing them, my pencil is quite light in my hand, so it's got a little bit of room to move around. This pencil's going to be quite scratchy and light, but I do want that to happen, and probably need to generally have a bit of a overall tone on that side, so it is a bit darker, and then you can kind of see that you do really need to darken in that tone, but it's nice if there's some variation and some of those lines blend in to the overall surface. Okay, we can achieve that also with a cylinder, and I'm not going to make the center of the tree trunk right there, okay? That is probably quite impossible with a piece of dowel or a round bit of wood. So this is quite a small scale, and we're going to have a few little chinks in that, give it a little bit of variation in that line, okay? My light again is going to come from the right there, so this is going to be the darker side of the object. So I'm going to make that fade out, but overall it's going to be darker on this side, and then it's going to fade out that way. So I've got my guide for my lines and my texture. I can make that blend into that tone. So the width of that texture needs to continue And this top surface needs to be quite consistent, but it can change tone once it goes down, so you do want a clear shift. So hopefully that feels a little bit like a cylinder, just with the use of pencil. A little bit of dark line in there just to add in, and it's all about layers, building it up. You might need to add in a little bit of extra line around it. Okay, cool. Now a flat piece of wood with some pencil. Need to sharpen a pencil, but mainly we're going to stick with applying a base layer first, and then but also having some lines to kind of work with as well. So this is going to be my base layer. This is going to be my light, my medium, and this is going to be my dark. Nice blunt pencil, nice wide stroke. And now I can apply my texture, which essentially was there already with my nice broad kind of stroke that I applied at the beginning. I'm just going to make these kind of change in depth, and then we can have that texture go down, which is like a segment of this. It's like cutting it out from here. Imagine cutting that out, and that is this piece of wood here. So you can achieve this with like just one Now what's happening here is that this grain is just about touching this piece of wood, or this surface here. So I'm just making it a little bit darker here. It doesn't necessarily have a grain on it. So that's going to just stay pretty much as is. And here I'm just going to add in like a little bit more depth of colour, just so there's a little bit more variation and that wood grain kind of stands out a bit more. But it can be quite subtle, and I also want a little bit more shadow on this surface here. Cool. And marker. So marker is essentially the same thing. You're going to apply a base tone or colour, and then you're going to work it up with layers. So I'm going to use these two colours here, E33 and E53. They're similar. I'm going to use the lightest colour as my background and apply that to each surface. And this is the surface that I'm going to have my rings on this time. I'm just going to switch it up. Actually, I changed my mind. That means it will match this. So I'm going to put my rings on this side. So my texture on these two need to be parallel, just like these two, or the texture of these two are parallel essentially. So the light's going to be coming from this side, so this needs to definitely be darker. Cool. Then my rings are gonna go, let's say this way. Like that. And then down there and along the surface, which is a bit too dark and actually wet at the moment, which is totally fine because I'm going to add in some more kind of depth through this marker, which is going to create these tones here. It's kind of handy that the marker is running out, so it's much sketchier and I can create a bit of tone with less risk of it having a big impact. And that's quickly using a bit of marker to demonstrate a piece of wood, which you can add in a bit of pencil if you want some more definition, because markers aren't necessarily the most accurate, and this will give a little bit more detail and texture. But see, I'm kind of twisting my pencil, it's quite loose. Okay, cool, so that is wood, texture, parallel lines but are loose and organic. Your tones still have to change, and you want to try to get your grain blending in. Okay, awesome.